Well, welcome to this Sunday virtual class sponsored by the BYU Library Family History in Provo, Utah. Our class today is on what happens to your family search memories when you die by James Tanner. And we're so grateful to him to prepare himself and teach us on this subject. And so I'll now turn the time over to him.
Today, we're going to talk about what happens to your family search memories when you die. Of course, your memories go with you, but the ones that are online with family search is a question. And that's something that we generally, I don't know that there's been a lot of discussion about this, but I do get kind of not too infrequently, I get questions about this subject. Just a note that might be of interest is that I did practice law as a trial attorney in Arizona for 39 years. And a significant part of my practice during all that time was doing probates and wills and trusts and things of that nature. And so what happens to certain things when you die was something that I pretty well knew about. And that doesn't mean that it would help with knowing about family search, however, other than there are some legal issues involved, but we're not going to get into those in any detail. Okay, so let's get started and come up with what's going on here. First of all, the statement is very important, and this is that the memories pages on the FamilySearch.org website add immense value by preserving valuable documents and photographs. It is a general understanding in the larger genealogical community that the efforts made by Family Search to preserve the information that they gather and that go onto their website and go to their physical locations and the physical items that they preserve are preserved by what we would call extraordinary measures. And the information in the Family Search website is backed up, at least very regularly. I've heard as often as twice a day. And it put in formats of information that are stored in very, very secure places. It's one of the most trusted places to put information. Now, if you understand the value of this in preserving your own memories and your things that you have. Now, there's a little bit of a limitation here because there are limits to the numbers of records that you can put on the Family Search website in different categories, and those numbers vary, but that's another discussion. So we're going to talk about preserving and what happens. It's kind of important. We're talking about genealogy here. So we're talking about history and we're talking about memories and we're talking about things that we would like to preserve, that we would like to find out and have available to us and to our posterity and cousins, families, larger family groups. So one of the things that's important to think about is that we all are going to pass on to whatever reward we receive after this life. And we should think about that occasionally. I don't think it's something we should dwell on too much, but it is something that we need to take into account, and you need a longer view. One of the things to understand is that there is a memories help section somewhere on the FamilySearch.org website with 7 pages of articles about the memories function. Here's the link. I'm putting that link in there to where that is. And I spent what I consider to be a considerable amount of time trying to figure out how I could get to this page. And in fact, when I found the page, I wanted to figure out how I got there. And that took me a considerable period of time. For me, a considerable period of time was, say, 15 or 20 minutes. And I couldn't replicate my discovery. But all of the information that deals with this memory issue, these memory issues, are in this 7 pages. So there are quite a few help references. You can find most of this information by clicking on the little question mark that's up in the upper right-hand corner of each of the screens and putting in memories or searching other words for memories, like memories, computer, users, things like that, contributor and users. All of that can be helpful in finding this information, but I thought it was important to kind of put it into an organized presentation that showed how you work through this. So I'm going to emphasize that all the help articles that I show screenshots of in this presentation really do exist somewhere in the FamilySearch.org website. That's all I can say. It took me a considerable amount of my time to find these, and so I just thought it would be nice to have them all here in a presentation. One of the ways to get into the FamilySearch website that is probably at least as helpful as clicking around on the website is to do a Google search. All of the whole website, including all the memories, by the way, and I'll emphasize that, the memories are discoverable, meaning you can do a Google search and find an individual memory on the FamilySearch.org website. And if you look at this page, this was a Google search, and you might notice that Google now allows you to integrate a AI search along with your searches on Google, and that's another subject, but it is possible. And down there in the list of family search things that came up when I searched for the memories and whatever is that page that has the 7 articles. That's where it actually came from, was a link out of a search by Google. So I can't say anything more definite than that because it took some time. These presentations from the classes become their own handout. And if you want to look for a handout, they will be posted as was mentioned before we got started. They'll be posted on the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. And as you go to YouTube, you can basically go scan through the YouTube video and pause on any page to get all the information like links and things like that. So this is one way that the information can be put out there. So you can also search in the, as far as the help center, you can search and you may be successful in finding it. This is the main article. The main article is what happens to memories after the contributor dies. And in order to look at this article, I'm going to go through this basically line by line and explain, from my perspective at least, what all this means and how this affects us as we do our work on Family Search. So first of all, there's 2 different terms that are used by Family Search for people working on the website. And basically, when they refer to the memories, they refer to contributors, somebody who contributed the information. And then they also, in their general run of instructions about the FamilySearch.org website, talk about people who are users. Well, users and contributors are the same people. They are people who basically have signed into the website and have access. And so this is an important, not an important distinction, but it's important to understand that any user who puts a memory up automatically becomes a contributor under the way it's referred to. So this is the important way to start thinking about this. First of all, there's no limit on how long a person marked living stays living. Okay, that means they can stay lit. They're not going to keep anybody physically alive, but if you mark a person living in the FamilySearch.org family tree, that person is going to be living until somebody changes that to deceased or puts in a death date. So the key here is that anyone you mark as living will not be visible to anyone else until the person is marked as deceased or a death date is put in. So basically that means that even if your remote ancestor back in the 17, 16, 1500s, and you put a new person in and mark them as living because you forget to mark them as deceased, then you can still see that person, but no one else can. So no one will find it or see it or do anything to it. That's basically what happens. So there's a way for you to keep people from seeing any information about an individual is to mark them as living. Well, that doesn't help if the person is deceased, but for living people, it does. And it's also important from a privacy standpoint because anyone you enter as your children or grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whatever you want to enter, are marked living, then you alone can see those individuals. That includes anybody who was born over 110 years ago. They're not automatically marked as deceased. And in other words, there's nothing in the program that goes through and looks at the date that you have entered about an individual's birth or death or whatever, birth, that will make them marked as deceased automatically. That has to be done by someone looking at the record and saying, well, this would be 140 years old and therefore they're deceased. But it also is careful because it's probably not a good idea to mark people as deceased unless you have a death date or some other evidence of death, if in fact they were born within the last 110 years, because people do live a long time. And it's very possible that they're a person well over 100 years old. That's something that we need to remember and understand. Now, here's what happens. So when, and everything I've got here and I'll be talking about is right there in the FamilySearch official help center articles that we've had, that they're also linked with others. So you can spend quite a bit of time going through this subject. So the deceased users or contributors' accounts are disabled when, well, both are disabled when FamilySearch learns of their death. So basically, it's up to somebody to mark that person as deceased. What it says here is that the notice that comes of something, a person being marked deceased, can come through the Church Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the ward clerks in the church. If the person is marked deceased on the membership of the church, that information is basically funneled or copied to the FamilySearch family tree, and the entry for that, the primary entry for that person is marked as deceased. Now, if that person is not associated at all with the LDS Church, then the submitting, somebody else has to submit that, some kind of evidence to FamilySearch, a link to a document or some sort of a death announcement, an obituary, a death certificate, whatever it is that comes up, one of the list of things that Social Security Death Index. There's a long list of documents types that show that people have died. So those are the issues that determine whether or not an individual in the program is marked as deceased and comes up as deceased. This is the important thing. Surviving family members cannot inherit or gain access to a disabled account. So what happens what happens to the account? The accounts are disabled. That means there can be no further changes made to the information in the person profile page account. And that means there's no process by which a surviving family member can take over that deceased person's information or account. So it says down there I'm just quoting exactly what's on the FamilySearch information screenshot here that says surviving family members cannot inherit or gain access to a disabled account. And this includes messages and memories. So what are the things that allow us to see what's there? Well, once a person is marked deceased, that the person's record is only disabled. It's not taken off of FamilySearch. The person's copy of the information that was entered during their lifetime, either by themselves or by others who were helping or associated with that individual. Basically, that information is I'm going to not say frozen, but it's disabled so that no additional information or changes can be made. And it becomes like any other dead person in the family tree, but it is viewable. Okay, let's say it's viewable. So here's another issue, is that when a person who is living is created in the FamilySearch family tree, and each individual who creates a record for that individual and marks it living, they're all duplicates. An individual person, every person there has his or her unique ID number. So there could be, if let's assume that you had a very large family and every child in the family created a page, a living page for the parents, and then every grandchild and every great-grandchild for the living parents, and then the parents died, then there could be dozens, even up to 100 or more copies of the person in duplicates of the living person. And all of those are still marked living. And then one of the copies may automatically be marked as deceased. But then what happens? Well, to the extent that FamilySearch is able to do so and can identify these, then there are some of them that may be merged automatically, but most of these are going to end up being extraneous copies that will need to be merged as they are marked deceased, because as long as they're still marked living, no one can see them and can't really do anything to them. So that creates kind of a reservoir of residual marking of all these different records deceased. And as I say something like that, this is not a new issue. This isn't an issue that is just come into playing in the last couple of years. This is something that's been talked about, discussed for years, ever since the introduction of FamilySearch family tree. Basically, we have now a lot of people since that introduction of the FamilySearch family tree who have passed on. And so this issue has been coming up regularly and been reviewed regularly and been discussed regularly. And there's very, very, very possible, like everything else on the FamilySearch.org website, it may be subject to some change in the future. In fact, one of the problems I have is there's any time lapse between I do my preparation for these presentations and the time that I do the presentation, is that there may be something that changes on the website and I don't catch it because I didn't do that much information. I didn't realize that the change had been made. So here, for example, this person died in 2014, going on about 10 years ago. And here's a duplicate that'll come up. So that's one way that you'll be able to know that there were duplicates. Well, it didn't die in 2014, died in 2020. Anyway, so that's one particular thing. And here's an important thing. All the memories, even those with living people in them. Now, we're talking about memories in the memories section here, and we're usually talking about photographs of people who contain both living people and people who are deceased, so that they're publicly viewable by default and findable. there's a lot of photos in the memory section, and finding one if the people weren't identified in the photo would be very, very difficult if it would just be by chance, but or searching for the thing. But the deceased people are findable, and if there are living people in the same photograph, then that photograph will be visible and findable. They can be shared through linking, social media, email, anything that happens once there are identified people in there. They can be found through topic tag search and FamilySearch memories. They can be found using Google and other search engines. In the future, memories may be findable in even more ways. So there's lots of things that people could be doing to find individuals in the memories section of FamilySearch. And by the way, yes, you can do searches into FamilySearch using Google and look for people who are listed as individuals, the deceased people who are listed on FamilySearch. There's a find function on the FamilySearch family tree that lets you look for individuals on the family tree, but theoretically you could also make that same search on Google. So they come up all the time when I'm doing research on individuals. I find that Google has brought up the FamilySearch family tree as a location for a potential name of an individual. So let's kind of go through a scenario here. The scenario is that I have an individual on the family tree, and that person is, I have decided that I want to put my children on, or I want to put my family members on. And so I begin the process of adding in my living family into the family tree. Now, I can say one thing for absolutely sure is that what happens when you do this is changing dramatically right now. And so that's going to be an item that's changing and will change in the very near future. So all of that about having living people will become a different issue when they're immediate family members. I can't say anything more. So we know that there is going to think that's something that's been talked about for the last at least 10 years. So if that changes, there may be a different way to handle the information. But for right now, once you're putting out a living person, then you've got into the whole issue of that person is only viewable by you, and that other people who put in the same living person are creating duplicates, and et cetera, and et cetera. So that's the problem with trying to add all these living people to it. But there's always been a way that happens when the person passes on. So if you create a living person and then that person dies and the person is marked deceased, then first of all, it's the person's information is disabled in a sense, but all of the information that they have on the website, on the FamilySearch family tree, is now viewable. So that's the important thing right there. It just becomes a regular entry on the FamilySearch family tree. So you cannot delete it, and you can't, for memories, for example, you can't delete the memories. So here's the important thing that I'll repeat that what I just was explaining a moment ago in case it wasn't clear, and that is if you tag one person in a photo who's deceased, then all the people in the photo can be viewed. Now, that doesn't mean they're identified or anybody would know who they were, or there's no other way to look at it, but these would be the people that would be the ones who are available to be viewed. Important also to remember that the memories contributed to FamilySearch during the time the person is alive remain on the FamilySearch after the contributor dies. So these become, the memories here become public memories, searchable. Just have to kind of repeat that information because sometimes it makes, it's not clear, and people say, well, do you mean you can actually see those? Yes, the answer is yes. You can actually see them. Yes, they're discoverable. Yes, they can search. Yes, all of those answers are yes. So were you to go to this specific person who's deceased, anyone who wanted to look at it would be able to see the same page. Now, after the contributor's account is locked or disabled is another way of putting that word, the memories remain accessible in these ways. This is what you can do to the memories that are there. You can see, they can be seen in the family tree if the contributor tagged them to the people in the family tree. So the key here is tagging the people in the photos. If you upload a photo to the FamilySearch.org memories section and you don't tag anybody, that photo isn't discoverable. Nobody can see it. Nobody really can do anything with it. It's just floating out there. You may be able to still see it yourself, but until you've made the effort to tag at least one person in that photo or the document or whichever thing you put into memories. Now, let me kind of expand that a little bit so you'll understand. I've been talking kind of impliedly about memories being photos, but memories can be documents, memories can be certificates, memories can be physical items in a photograph, et cetera, et cetera. All sorts of things can be put into the memory section. But for any of those uploaded items, digital files to the memory section to be seen, they have to be tagged. Tagging is what turns it on. In other words, uploading it is just the first process step. When you tag the image, then it automatically is able to be seen. They can be found by search engines and the memory search feature if the contributor adds titles, descriptions, topic tags, and other searchable text. In other words, if you have a photo that's just a photo of a person and you upload that to the FamilySearch family tree memories section, it doesn't do anybody any good because unless it's tagged or unless other information is added, because nobody can see it. By chance, they might run across it, but they can't see it. Can't do anything. So you really need to put that item that's been uploaded to the FamilySearch family tree into active participation. It has to be tagged, and it helps to put in an approximate date or a date, a place, identify all the people in the photograph to the extent possible, tag each one to their entry in the family tree. All of that is what adds the ability of that memory item to become a useful participant in the genealogical process. And they can also be found if you put them into an album or you share a link to the album. So the albums out there aren't completely empty. And they can also be accessed through copying the URL, the address of the internet address of that individual item. So you can send a copy of the URL when you open up a memory. You can just copy the address bar and send that, and somebody can go directly to that picture or that document or that whatever. Now, here's a fundamental issue with the entire process here. You cannot delete a memory unless you yourself added that memory. Okay, so this is an extension of what happens when you die, is if you die, you're not there, so it can't be deleted. Or is there a way to get it deleted? Yes, if it's objectionable, if it violates copyright, if it's something that violates the terms and conditions of the FamilySearch website, then the answer is yes, they will take action and get rid of the memory. But most everything else that you don't put in is you can't do anything. Now you can add information to it, you can tag, you can add topics and all that, but you can't delete it. And then, so when you do that, if you click here on this person, for example, is just one that I chose that I didn't add, and then I click on the actions, I can get download and add to album, but I can't delete that. But if I go to a memory, see, that's what I get. I can't touch that. But if I go to a memory like I added, this is one that I added, and you can look at this one. And if I click on the actions, then I can delete it. And the extension of that, apparently at the present time with FamilySearch, is if I die, then then the person who could delete that is no longer available, and that can't be deleted except under one of the circumstances that I've already described. So any contributor, that's anyone who's on the FamilySearch family tree, can tag a memory to a person in the family tree. If the contributor's account is locked, other users can add new tags to the memory, detach tags from the memory, and attach it to somebody else. So there's ways to edit all that information, but there's no way to have it removed, in a sense. By default, all the photos, documents, stories, and audio files you add are publicly viewable. I'm just repeating that again because there's a question here about how do I make a memory private? Private memories are a unique category. You may have certain items in your gallery that you want to keep private, meaning that they're viewable only by you. And that doesn't mean that they're not tagged. It just means that they're marked private. And that means something beyond what you might think it means. And so basically, you need to be aware of what happens if you do that. And my suggestion, which is not necessarily the suggestion made in any of the instructions from FamilySearch, by the way, is that if it's private, don't put it online, period. If there's something you do not want people to read, do not put it on the internet. There's no reason to do that, because what happens particularly with private memories is that they are never visible. So there's no mechanism. If you died with private memories on the FamilySearch family tree, they would be private and viewable only by the contributor, which would be you, and you would be deceased. And it won't show up in search results. It won't show up in any way at all. It will be kept. Then nothing on that goes onto the family tree is ever thrown away by FamilySearch. It's still somewhere in the vast memory of the whole website, but it's gone. As far as the world is concerned, it never existed because no one can see it and there's no way to get to it. And even FamilySearch doesn't have a convenient way of doing that, and wouldn't anyway, would never put something that had been marked private and mark it unprivate or make it whatever. So that's basically the issue. So now it's basically you need to limit your private memories to items you never want anyone to see. Now, why would you put that on the internet? That would be my question. I don't understand what would motivate you to put something on the internet that no one would ever be able to see, unless you marked it as took it out of being marked private and made it public on the internet. I mean, maybe you want to wait until that last dying breath, and the last thing you do is come on your computer and mark all your stuff public. Well, that may be a possible thing. You can write stories about that. I'm sure mystery stories would be an interesting way to do that. But you couldn't put it in your will. You can't do anything with it. You can't say, I want all my memories, all my private memories made public, because there's no mechanism to do it. Okay. So if the original contributor designated some memories as private, they remain in the FamilySearch database but are not made public and cannot be found using family tree, search engines, the memory search feature, direct URLs, albums, or tags. Okay, so that just says it in a more expansive way of what I've been emphasizing there. So the best practices for adding and maintaining memories is pretty straightforward. And we're talking about each memory in your gallery, that you tag each memory to at least one person in the family tree. That's very important. Even if you have a group picture of people back in the 1920s or something, and you can identify only your direct line ancestor, it is important to tag that person who you can identify, because then everyone else in the picture is visible, and subsequent contributors, users to the family tree can come along and tag additional people in the photograph. Now, what happens? This is another issue that just came up today, for example, from someone who wrote an email to me. And that was, they are saying that an individual that I identified in the family tree is identified incorrectly. Well, the answer is change it, identify it as something else. Put a note down that says this isn't the right person. I mean, the idea here is that there's many different ways. There's lots of different ways to communicate within the FamilySearch Family Tree program and the memories section that will allow you to give feedback or ask questions or participate with the other people in the program. So first of all, this is the tagging that goes along. And by the way, all of these people are deceased. And then we have a complete tagging. So what are some of the other things that we think are very, very important? First is to add a descriptive title. Untitled things are very difficult to find and very difficult to identify when they're in the memories, vast number of millions and millions and millions of memories that are out there. So it would be very helpful to put in a kind of an explanation of what's in the picture and who is important and why that picture has been uploaded. And then tagging the individuals, which I've already mentioned, adds a little bit more information to that picture. And then adding the title, that's the title up there, and then adding topic tags. And there's a list of details that you can add. There's a drop-down menu that lets you choose topic tags. You can put in, if you know the event date, then that's important. And if you know the place, then that's important. And there's a place to put in a description. And you could even add it to an album, or you could add a story to go with it. And you can record a memory, as you can see in front of it. And there's just a whole lot of information that would be additionally helpful. Now, what if you don't know all that information? Should you put your photographs and your documents on the memories, even if you don't know all the information or all the people or whatever? The answer is absolutely, because ultimately the FamilySearch family tree is cooperative, meaning everyone has access to that information. And for other people who are your relatives or who are somehow related to the incident, the event, the photograph, the document, or whatever, can then go in and add their own information and identify people and tag and do all of that. And the thing I think, which is kind of the tragedy that underlies a lot of what's in the memory section, is that people do not spend the time to go through and look for their relatives. They just don't understand that other people may have added photos with their relatives. They may be mistagged, they may be misidentified, but if you go through and see that there's somebody there that you know or identify, then you can tag that person and, in a sense, put that so that it is attached to that person's profile page or individual page, and then you have that information available. So you add all this information, stories, transcriptions, audio files, documents, all sorts of all that things goes into the memories. So now the question is, how do I permanently delete something? If I said, oh, I shouldn't have put that up online. It can be deleted. You are the user that put that there, the contributor, then you can delete that item. When it's deleted, it's gone. It's not there. And if you want to restore it, you can restore it by putting it back online. I mean, there's just a way to do it, but there's also an explanation of how you could recapture that. Like you put it up online, you realized that you didn't want it there, you thought that, and then you took it offline, and then you destroyed the original for some reason, you shredded it or whatever, and then you went and said, oh, well, there's ways to do that. There's ways to get that back, but I suggest that what I really suggest is the answer to that question is whether you're going to keep an item online or not, you could put it on your own computer and your own hard drive or your own storage device and keep that information and not shred those unless you are absolutely sure that you do not want that information ever again. Okay. So you can ask for removal of the memory from FamilySearch if you don't have access. If you're not the contributor, you can still ask for it. You can ask for person tag. You can ask for the removal of the person tag. If your name is in a topic tag, you can remove the tag yourself. You can request removal of copyrighted information. You can work directly with the contributor of a memory through the messaging system available in FamilySearch or through email or any other way of contacting the person. If they refuse to your request and you have a good reason for having it removed, then you can contact FamilySearch. So there's all sorts of ways to do it. And emphasize once again that memories added before a person dies become visible when they are deceased. So they just are there. And I would be careful when I was going through and tagging and describing memories to be careful that you describe and tag memories that are only available to be tagged. And if someone contacts you about taking down a memory or something, I would not even bother to worry about the reason. I would just simply take it down. If there was anything in that they object to or do not want to have in a photo that's on FamilySearch, then it's time to take it down. Okay, well, I'm ending a little bit earlier than normal. Thank you.